All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Let's begin. A lot to do today. Today's daf is Chaf 20. We are picking up on Yud Tes Amud Beis. We are picking up on Yud Tes Amud Beis. We are picking up at Amar Le Rab Shimon L'Ta'amei. Just want to confirm everybody's in agreement. This is where we're starting from. Right? Amar Le Rab Shimon. So we'll say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 lines are from the bottom. Good? Excellent. All right, so our shir this morning is dedicated, or our week of learning this morning is dedicated by Meir and Shani Cohn, as a zechus of Refuah Shlema for Kol Cholei Yisrael, to Ayal and Sarah, by Ayal and Sarah Steinberg for Refuah Shlema for Shulamis Basusha, and of course our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Elul, for the month of Av, Yonah and Shishi Ehrenfeld, in memory of Yonah's grandfather Joseph Ehrenfeld, Yosef ben Shmuel Aaron Zichron Levracha. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, his Neshama will have an aliyah and the family in Nechama. And I will say with that, let's begin. So if you remember again, just a word of reorientation. So if you remember again, the Mishnah is dealing with the case of a person who went ahead and separated a nekeva, a female animal, for an asham. Remember again, asham must be brought from a male animal. So I've gone ahead and I've separated out a nekeva for an asham. So Tanakama said, what do? Let it graze until it develops a mum. When it develops a mum, sell it off. Use the proceeds to purchase your real asham. The real asham. If at the end of the day you ended up sacrificing a different animal as an asham, so you fulfilled your asham obligation. In that case, still allow the female animal to graze, develop a mum, sell it off. But in this case, again, you use the proceeds ultimately to go ahead and purchase a nedava. Rabbi Shimon says, if you go ahead and you separate a female animal for an asham, essentially Rabbi Shimon says you do not have to allow it to graze until it develops a mum. Rather, you are permitted to sell it straight up. Why? Because at the end of the day, Rabbi Shimon says, Ein mum gidola mizo. Right? That's a mum. Being a female animal in the context of an asham, that is a mum. Sefer will say again, there's no need for it to develop another mum. Sell it off straight and use the proceeds to go ahead and purchase a real asham. To which the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Shimon. So what Rabbi Shimon says, let's just start from the two das. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Timaker b'lo mum. So Rabbi Shimon says you can sell it without a mum. Amar Rav Chiya bar Avda Rabbi Yochanan. Migo dinachsan le kidushas damim. Teichus leinami kidushas aguf. Now, remember again, in the previous sugya, we said that there's an opinion that holds that once one's monetary sanctity devolves upon the animal, so physical sanctity automatically follows in some way. So Rabbi Shimon, why don't you say the same thing over here? Everyone's going to agree that when you set aside a female as an asham, as much as it can't be offered up as a carbon, but it still acquires monetary sanctity. So why don't we say that once you acquire monetary sanctity, you acquire some level of physical sanctity as well. Amar li Rabbi Shimon l'tamei d'amar kol midi d'lo chazi l'gufei lo nachsa le kedushas haguf. No, because Rabbi Shimon is of the opinion, Rabbi Osai, that ultimately, again, halacha l'maisa, anytime the carbon is not fit to be offered up on the Mizbeach, it does not acquire Kidushas Haguf. Tisanya, Asham ben Shana, if you have an Asham from an animal that is 1 year old, Veviu ben Shtayim, so we'll say there are different types of Ashams. So let's say again, I have an Asham that is supposed to come from a 1 year old animal, but I end up bringing a 2 year old animal, or ben Shtayim ve'eviu ben Shana, or I have a 2 year old animal and I end up bringing a 1 year old animal. Kshera, ultimately, the animal itself, the carbon will be kosher because it still falls within Torah's asham, but it does not satisfy the owner's obligation because the owner had to bring a different type of asham. The Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon says, first wide line about say about in the Testament that base. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kol Atzman Einon Kiddushin. Rabbi Shimon says the Kiddusha does not work at all. It's the wrong type of carbon, therefore the designation does not work at all. But what about if you offer up an animal before its appointed time, right before the time when it becomes fit for use? Yet, Rabbi Shimon, the Kaddish. Rabbi Shimon says, nevertheless, that sacrificial kedusha still devolves upon an animal that has not yet reached the right time. Mechusar zman, shiny mechusar zman, dechazi the machar. To which the Gemara says, mechusar zman is different. Why? Because even though it's not fit now, it will be fit tomorrow. Ihachi asham ben shtayim, ve'aviu ben shana, hachazi the shana. But 1 second. So why didn't I say this thing over here? If I was supposed to bring in asham, a 2-year-old asham, but instead I went ahead and I brought a 1-year-old asham. So say that that consecration should devolve upon the animal because it is fit for something. Ella hainu time Rabbi Shimon mechusar zman. Rather, Rabbi Shimon's logic when it comes to an animal that is mechusar zman is what? The yalif leimi bechar. He learns it out from bechar. Kedesai Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda or Mishum Rabbi Shimon. Mechusar zman nichnas ladir lehis aser. They both say even if you have an animal that's less than 8 days old, halacha lemaisa could still go into the pen for meiser behema purposes. V'harihu ki bechar, and that animal will be just like a bechar. How so? Ma bechar kadosh lifnei zmano. They both say just like a bechar is kadosh ultimately again, even before you could offer it up on the mizbeach. Right? They both say the earliest time you could offer up a bechar on the mizbeach is when 8 days old. Right? Yet when does it become kadosh? It's already kadosh merechem. Right? Even certainly when it's born, and even from the womb. So we'll say you see that there's a concept ultimately of kedusha devolving upon a sacrificial animal even before it is fit for sacrificial use. To which the Gemara says, "Af mechusar zman kadosh lifnei zmano v'karv la'achar zman." So also Rabbi Shimon's logic is by mechusar zman as well. Even though the animal is not fit to be offered up, nevertheless, what? It can still possess kedusha. Tan Rabbanan, suppose let's analyze this brayso. Hamakdish nekeva la'olaso. If someone goes ahead and is makdish in a keva, right? So I'll say, remember, I go ahead and I makdish a female animal for my ola. Again, ola must be male. Ola must be male. But nevertheless, I am makdish a female animal. What's that look? On top of chaf, ula pischo, ula ashamo. Or I designate a female for my karban pesach, for my asham. Again, all of these karbanos are karbanos which must come from male animals. Oset temurah. I will say, even though the animal that I'm quote unquote designating is not fit for its particular sacrificial usage, I can't offer up an akeva as an olah, as a pesach, or an asham. Nevertheless, oset temurah. We'll say this animal can affect substitution. So if I go ahead and I designate the female as an olah, and then I go ahead and I exchange another animal for it, the temurah quote unquote works. You know, obviously temurah is aser, you're not allowed to do it, but it works. It works. Rabbi Shimon says, "Lo lasa oset temurah, the pischa ula ashamo ein oset temurah." So I say ultimately, Rabbi Shimon says that ultimately the olah, for an olah, it does affect temurah, but for Pesach and Asham, it doesn't affect temurah. Why not? She'ein lecha davar oset temurah ela haroeh listaiv. Because I will say ultimately what happens, the only type of animal that affects temurah is the type of animal that would have been set out to pasture to develop a mum. So we'll say only the type of animal that if you had to redeem it, you'd have to set it out to pasture in order to go out and develop a mum. Amar Rebbe says, Ein ani roa dvarash Rabbi Shimon bePesach. So Rebbe says, I don't agree with Rabbi Shimon's logic by Karban Pesach. Why? Hoil umosra Pesach karav shlamim. Because it will say ultimately again by Karban Pesach, if you happen to have a leftover Pesach, or for that matter leftover funds, so what is it used for? It's used for a Karban Shlamim. The lema ein ani roa dvar Rabbi Shimon ba'asham. But why doesn't he say, I don't agree with Rabbi Shimon's shita ba'in asham? Hoil umoser asham karav ola. Since ultimately, again, what? The leftover asham, moser abosek can mean one of two things. Moser can mean leftover funds or leftover animals. For example, again, had you gone ahead and designated an animal for the asham, lost it, offered a replacement, and then found the first. So we'll say, Rebbe Sarala Kirabanan. Rebbe holds like the Rabbanan, who say, Da Amri Mosaros Lenedavas Tzibor Azli, Ve'in Temurah B'Tzibor. ultimately, Rabbi holds like the Rabbanan who hold that what? Any leftover, Mosaros and Nedavos Tzibor, leftovers from the carbon go ultimately again to Nedavos Tzibor, communal Nedavos, and ultimately again there is no such concept of Temurah by the Tzibor. Kasaga Daitchahain, the time Rabbi Shimon, Gabi Marfish, Nekeva La'ola, so, Mishum Hachi Oset Temurah, Da'ika Shem Ola Ale, Gabi Ola Sa'ov. So we're going a little bit back to yesterday. So I might have thought that Rabbi Shimon's logic is like this. When Rabbi Shimon says in the case of where you're mafresh on a keva, right, for an ola, Rabbi Shimon's logic, Rabbosai, is that it's able to make temurah. Why is it able to make temurah? Because it's going back to yesterday's daf. Rabbi Shimon is of the opinion that's what? That ultimately there is some level of shem ola that devolves upon an akeva. Why? Because there is a case of an akeva that's offered up as an ola. When is that? By birds, right? By tziparim, right? There's a bird offering. So therefore, again, maybe it's dafka in the case of an ola, of an nekeva ola, or olas nekeva, that Rabbi Shimon says, ultimately, again, you could affect temurah, because some level of sacrificial sanctity devolved upon the nekeva. However, the Gemara says, so if that's the case, Elamei Ata, listen to this, Elamei Ata, B'koin gadol shehifish para liparo tikdush. So we'll say, now remember, this is Rabbi Shimon's shita. Again, we don't paskin this way. We said this yesterday in the Rambam. But Rabbi Shimon's shita is that essentially, any time you have an animal that is shaykh to the carbon to the category of the particular carbon for which it's being designated, even if it can't be offered up as that carbon, nevertheless, it possesses a certain level of sacrificial sanctity. So again, just to illustrate that, as the Gemara just did, if a person says, I hereby designate this nekeva, this female animal, as an ola, could it be offered up as an ola? No. Right? Why an ola must be zachar? Yet Rabbi Shimon says that halacha lamaisa, that nekeva still has certain ola sanctity. Why? Because it has a shaykhus to the concept of ola. What's the shaykhus to the concept of ola? Again, bird offerings. You could offer up a bird offering that's an ola, even if it's female. So let's remember again, that manifests itself in two primary ways. Number one, that according to Rabbi Shimon, because the nekeva is vested with sacrificial sanctity, therefore what? It can affect temurah. It can affect temurah. That's number one. And I will say number two, what we saw yesterday was what? That if that female were to give birth to a male, according to Rabbi Shimon, that male could be used for what? Could be used directly for ola. So what it says the Gemara, if that's Rabbi Shimon's logic, listen to these cases. Elamei Ata, B'koin gadol shehifish para liparo tigdish. But say, remember again, they said at the par of the kohen gadol on Yom Kippur. So the halacha is that normally he has to offer up a par, a bull, right? A male, a bull. What happens if accidentally he went ahead and he was makdish a para, a cow? So the Gemara says, by the according to Rabbi Shimon, that cow, that female cow, should have some level of sanctity. Why? Da'ika paras chatos. Because we'll say ultimately again, there is a concept, a female cow does have shaykhs to sacrificial service. Where? Paraduma. Paraduma. Right? Paraduma is a female cow. Right? So therefore again, you see that a cow has shaykhs sacrificial service, to which the Gemara says, Kadshi be de kabayisu. This is actually quite interesting. Paraduma rabosai actually does not possess sacrificial sanctity, or if even for that matter, physical sanctity. What does it possess? It possesses monetary sanctity. By the way, what's the raya to that? What's the raya? Where is paraduma shechted? Right, and harazesim. Right, it's not shechted inside the base. It's right shechted on the mountain opposite the Beis Hamikdash. But let's say if paraduma was a carbon, that act would be illegal, punishable by death. The fact that paraduma shechted outside of the Beis Hamikdash tells us that it's kache by the kabayis. It actually has financial sanctity, not normative, sacrificial, physical sanctity. So the Gemara says the kache by the kabayis la avdi temurah, and therefore again alocha lamaisa. In general, kache by the kabayis cannot go ahead and affect temurah. Another case, yachid shehifish seir l'seirasa. I will say, so let's say again, I have to bring, so tigdush. So I'll say if I have to go ahead and I accidentally, I went ahead and I designated a seir for my chatos. So we'll say ultimately again, a male seir for my chatos. So the Gemara says this should work, or I should say there should be some level of kedusha. Why? Da'ika seir nasi. Because we'll say at the end of the day, the nasi has to bring a male seir for his carbons. Even though my chata should come from a female, nevertheless, there is the concept of a male seir, ultimately by the chatas of a nasi. Therefore, some level of sacrificial sanctity should devolve upon the seir. Inami, nasi shehifish seira, the seiro, tikdish, the yachid mafish seira. Both say conversely, if a nasi accidentally went ahead and designated a seira, right, a female seir, so ultimately again that should work as well. Why? Because by a yachid there's a concept ultimately again as you utilize such a carbon. So also again remember, if we're using this logic that halacha lemaisa, as long as the animal has a shaychus, right, to carbonos, then halacha lemaisa it acquires some level of sacrificial sanctity. Then in these cases of erroneous designation, the animal should still acquire some level of sanctity. To which the Gemara says, no, that's not a good raya. Why? Hani trei gufe ninhu. Ultimately, the Gemara will say a kohen gadol and a regular person are two different entities. So you can't bring a raya. Even Rabbi Shimon will say that the concept that a wrongful designation could acquire some level of sanctity is when that same person in a different context would be able to offer that particular animal as a karban. But you can't start bringing rayas from other people who have different halachas of karbanos. Gemara goes right there. Chato achlo nismanu. But listen to this. What happens if the kohen gadol went ahead to commit an aver before he was appointed kohen gadol? Therefore, kimafish seir l'sira so tikdish. So he'll say, then what happens? And then he becomes kohen gadol. If halacha l'maisi accidentally went ahead and separated out a male seir instead of a female, it should work. Why? Da ilu chata hashta bar isu yisiru. Because if he were to sin now as the kohen gadol, he would bring a seir and not the seira. So ultimately, again, even though now in his present life it's the wrong karban, in his previous life it would have been a karban. To which the Gemara says, here's the problem. Ha lo chata lo ichayiv b'seir. Here's the problem. That's fine, but halacha l'maisa, had he not sinned, he would not have been chayiv in that seir. Ihachi hachanami ha lav olas ha'of kamaisi. But then Rabbi Shimon's whole logic is blown out of the water, because halacha, remember again, why is it that Rabbi Shimon holds that if you designate a female animal as an olah, even though it cannot be offered up as an olah, nevertheless Rabbi Shimon paskins that what? That animal acquires some level of olah sanctity. Why? Because in a different context, you could offer up a female as an olah. The Gemara just objected to the Kohen Gadol case, because in the Kohen Gadol case, halacha l'maisa, again, you're going to try to say that if the Kohen Gadol designated a certain animal now, even though again, now as a Kohen Gadol he couldn't have offered it, but he could have offered it, halacha l'maisa, before he was the Kohen Gadol. But the Gemara said, but l'maisa now he couldn't bring it, so why should Kedusha devolve upon it? To which the Gemara said, well, if you're going to say that, you could say that you could object the same thing over here, that even though there's a concept of olah sa'of, right now this individual is not chayv in olah sa'of. If he's not chayv in olah sa'of, then perhaps the designation of the female animal should be meaningless. Rabbi Shmuel Silber like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah disnan harei alai olah yavi keves. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah omer tar o ben Yonah. So I'll say, amazingly enough, Rabbi Shimon holds like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says something amazing. He says, in general, whenever you pledge an olah, you always have the right to. So we'll say whenever you pledge an olah, the Tanakama says olah by default means what? Sheep, specifically male sheep, right? Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says it means even birds. You have a choice. You want to bring sheep, you could bring sheep. You want to bring birds, you could bring birds. So we'll say, which is something very interesting, which means that every single time you pledge an olah, halacha l'maisa, if you want to bring a bird, you can. I will say the Tanakama rejects that because generally bird offerings are reserved for who? The poor. So if you have means, you can't just decide to bring birds. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, yes, you can. Rabbi Shimon holds like that. Therefore, Rabbi Shimon essentially holds that any time you have an olah designation, technically speaking, you could have satisfied that with bird offerings. That's why he holds halach, according to him, halacha l'maisa. That's what? That when you designate a female animal as an olah, even though technically speaking you can't offer it up on the mizbeach, a level of olah sanctity devolves upon that particular animal. Tanan Hasam. So what's we learn there? Hamakdish nechasav. If a person is makdish his property, I'm makdish my property. V'haya bahen behema ru'ya l'gabi mizbeach. And Rabbi say, in my estate that I was makdish, there are animals that are fit for sacrificial use. Zecharim v'nekevos, male and female animals. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Zecharim yimachru l'tzarchei olos. Rabbi Eliezer says, you sell off the male animals and use the proceeds for olos. Unekevos yimachru l'tzarchei shlamim. And ultimately, again, the nekevos, the female animals, should be sold off for the purposes of olas, for the purposes of shlamim. Udmeihem yiplu im shar nechasim lebedek habayis. And ultimately, again, any additional proceeds ultimately fall with the rest of the estate for bedek habayis. Rabbi Shua says, "Scharim yikr atzmon yikrevu." Rabbi Yeshua says, I don't understand. I don't have to sell off the male animals. Let the male animals themselves be used as olos. Unekevas yimachru l'tzarchei shlamim. And ultimately, again, let the nekevas, the female animals, be sold for the purposes of shlamim. The yavi b'demei and olos, and then I could go ahead and utilize their monies to go ahead and bring olos. Rashi says over here, unekevos yimachru. Rashi says, the yavi b'demei and olos. Distamaihu li ola akdishinhu. So as we're going to see, it sounds like what the Bryce is saying over here is that a stam nekeva is hokdash for olos. So the Gemara says, "Ushar nechasim yiplu lebedek habayis." Amar Rabbi Chiya bar Abba Rabbi Yochanan. Amar Rabbi Chiya bar Abba Rabbi Yochanan. The Rabbi Yoshua da Amar zecharim atzman yikrevu olos. So according to Rabbi Shua, who says that the male animals themselves are offered up as olos, unekevas heichi mekarvan shlamim hamikoach kedusha dechuya kaasyon. How can you go ahead and offer up the nekevas as shlamim? After all, again, they come from what's called kedusha dechuya. We'll say kedusha dechuya means what? A set aside kedusha. What does that refer to? Look at Rashi. So I think it's the last Rashi on the daf. Mikoach kedusha dechuya dechevan discharim karva olos. Because since the male animals are offered up as olos, udimei hashlamim olos, and again the value of the female animals is used to purchase olos as well. Michlal desvirle destamali ola akdishinu. Now, both say, here's what's interesting. It sounds like what Rabbi Shimon is saying is that what? That halacha lamaisa, when you're makdish an animal stam automatically goes to what? Goes to olos. If that's the case, Rabbi says something very interesting. Now, remember, a female cannot be offered up as an ola. So the Gemara is saying over here that halacha lamaisa, you're going to take the nekevas, right? You're going to take the nekevas, you're going to offer them up as shlamim. But how could that be? Because originally they are stemming from what's called a kedusha dechuya, almost like a stunted kedusha. Why is it a stunted kedusha? Because again, you're telling me that the default sacrificial designation of animals is as olos. Yet these nekevas cannot be offered up as olos. To which the Gemara says, Lishnachrin, another version of this. Amali Rabbi Chiya bar Abba Rabbi Yochanan. Mi dekam Rabbi Yeshua zecharim atzmon yikrevu olos. The fact that we said that the male animals themselves are offered up as olos. Lememra dekedushas haguf akdishinu. Then Abba say this could that when one is makdish his estate, there is a physical sanctity which devolves upon the animals. If that's the case, ihachi nekevas amayi machru l'tzarchei shlamim. Why are the female animals sold off for the purposes of shlamim? Baya raya. Ultimately, they should be set out to pasture, develop a mum, and then sell it afterwards. Amr Rabbi Yoshua, Sarva like Rabbi Shimon. He holds like Rabbi Shimon, who holds the Amar, Kol midi de lo chazi le lugufei, lo nachta le kedusha saguf. He holds like Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah. And what does Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah hold? Any time that an animal cannot be offered up on the Mizbeach, ultimately what? Physical sanctity does not devolve upon the animal. Disnan, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Timacher, Shalo B'mum. This Rabbi says, quoting Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah, that if you went ahead and you designated an akeva as an asham, Rabbi Shimon says you don't have to put it out to graze, sell it off immediately. Why? Because the fact that it's an akeva, ein mum gidol mizo, right? That's the mum. In this particular sacrificial context. Therefore, again, no physical sanctity devolves upon it, and therefore you could sell it off immediately. Since the female animal is not fit for asham, therefore what? No physical sanctity has devolved upon it. Amar da Rabbi Shimon gabi nekeva la'asham. So when does Rabbi Shimon say a shita? That's in the case of a nekeva for an asham. Why? Amud beis. Deleka shem asham al imo. Because Rabbi will say, again, remember, when you designate a nekeva as an asham, Rabbi will say, what is the impact of that designation? 0. Why 0? Because there's no such thing as a female asham. Aval gabe nekeva liola diika shem ola al imo. But I will say, when it comes to designating a female animal as an ola, so remember again, halacha lamaisa, as we keep saying over and over, there is a concept of having an nekeva for an ola by where again? By ultimately against siporim, by birds. Therefore, again, maybe I would say afilu Rabbi Shimon moda. Perhaps again, even Rabbi Shimon would agree that in that case there is some level of kidushas haguf. There is some level of physical sanctity, and I will say therefore again, the animal would have to be put out to graze, develop a mum, and then be sold. The Gemara says, "Va'od hasham ina Rabbi Shimon la'olaso oset temurah." And I will say furthermore, we learned according to Rabbi Shimon that einachinami for the ola one can affect temurah. Amrle Rabbi Yeshua savarle ki idach. Amrle Rabbi Yeshua savarle ki idach tana libid Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yeshua holds like the other Tana's version according to Rabbi Shimon. The Sanya, here we go. Rabbi Shimon Yehuda Omer Mishun Rabbi Shimon af la'olaso ein oseh temurah. The Rebbe say halacha l'maaseh, he holds that even by the ola, right, even by a female ultimately designated as an ola, it cannot affect temurah. Okay, so we'll say, so bottom line, halacha l'maaseh, just kind of looping this back to the Mishnah, we have a fundamental machlokes about what happens if you're mafresh asham you mafresh an nekeva for an asham. Tanakama holds it develops some level of physical sanctity, therefore again must be set out to graze, develop a mum, and go ahead and sell it off. Use the proceeds to purchase an asham. Rabbi Shimon says, doesn't have to graze, halacha l'maisa, ein mum gidol mizo, you could sell it off immediately. How do we go ahead and paskin? The Rambam in Hilchos Psuli Hamokdoshin Parak Dalet Halacha Tazayin says, Hamafrish nekeva liashamo. If a person designates a nekeva, female animal, for an asham, remember again, asham could only be male. What's the halacha? Tira ad sheyipol bamum v'timacher v'yavi b'dameh asham. Both say halacha l'maaseh we pass like the Tanakama, namely that's what? You let it graze, it does develop some level of physical sanctity, you let it graze till it develops a mum, sell it off, use the money to go in and purchase an asham. If, however, you ended up offering up another asham in its stead, so what do you do? Same process, let it graze, develop a mum. Just in this case, you're going to use the proceeds to purchase a nedava instead of an asham. Beautiful. Weiter, says the Mishnah, Temurah asham. I will say, here we go. The Temurah of an asham. Again, remember, simple case, I have an asham animal. Okay, right? But we'll call it again a male, right? The truth is, we're going to see, actually, Rashi points out, it doesn't matter if it's a male or a female. But I have now the Temurah of an asham. I have an asham carbon designated. I decide to exchange it for another animal. Temurah asham, or Vlad Temurah, or I will say again, the offspring of the Temurah of an asham, or Vladon, ad sof kol ha'olam. So we'll say again, no matter how many generations I have over here, right? What's the halacha? Yiru ad sheyistavu v'yimachru v'yiplu damav l'nedava. We'll say, what's the halacha? This is by the Temurah, right? So again, I go ahead and I have an asham animal, male, female, doesn't matter right now for our purposes. I commit the avera. We'll say it's very important to remind ourselves because we talk about Temurah like, I did Temurah. So just so we remember, Temurah is aser. You're not allowed to do that. It just happens if you did it, it works. I exchange Temurah animal asham A, and I decide, I don't want to give A, I want to give B. What's the halacha with Temurah? Both animals are kadosh. So we'll say, so therefore what happens? The Temurah now gives birth. The Mishnah tells me the offspring of the Temurah animal has Kedusha, and so on, the offspring of the offspring, the offspring of the offspring, ad sof kol ha'olam, right? For all eternity, the offspring of the Temurah of the Asham has Kedusha. So I'll say, so what do you do with these animals, the Temurah of the Asham? In general, the Temurah, its offspring, you let it graze until it develops a mum. You go ahead and you sell it, and you use the money for nidava. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yamusu. Rabbi Eliezer says that we'll say, what's the halacha ultimately again of the Temurah of an asham? You let it die. You let it die, right? You don't feed it, you don't give it the drink, you let it die. So we'll say the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yavi b'dameh olos. Rabbi Eliezer says, you sell it off and use the monies ultimately to purchase an olah. Again, we'll discuss these shitas. Asham shemesu bailov. We'll say what happens if you have an asham whose owners died. So Reuven has to bring in asham. He died before he brought it. Now his children inherit it. What's talacha? Or shekipru bailov. Or I will say for that matter again, Reuven had to bring in asham. He lost asham A, brought a substitute animal B, and then what? Finds A. What's talacha? Yiru adshi yistavu. I was saying in all of these cases, we take the asham animal, we allow it to graze until it develops a mum, the machru, sell it, the yipludam in nadava, and ultimately utilize the monies to purchase nadava. Rabbi Eliezer says yamusu. Rabbi Eliezer once again says we let the animal die. Rabbi Elazar Omer yavi b'dameh olah. So Rabbi Elazar says that you use the monies right after you sell it off to purchase the olah. V'halo af nadava olahi. But I don't understand. Isn't Nedava is also an Olah? If that's the case, Ma bein divrei Rabbi Eliezer la divrei Chachamim. So we'll say, what exactly is the nafkamina? Rabbi Elazar and the Chum seem to say the same exact thing. Ella bizman shiba Olah somech ala mevi nesachim u nesachim mishalom. We'll say, here's the difference. When you bring the animal as an Olah, you do smicha on it. You bring libations, and libations must come from my own money. Furthermore, again, if he was a Kohen, the person bringing the Korban was a Kohen. Avodasa va'ora shalo. Ultimately, again, he has right to do the avoda and keep the hides. Ubizman shehi nedava. But I will say, when it's an nedava, not an olah, then what? Eino somich ala. There's no smicha. Ve'eino mevi ala nesachim. There are no libations. Unisachaha mishal tzibor. And we'll discuss what this means, but when there are libations, those libations come from communal funds. Afapishu Kohen, and even though ultimately he is a Kohen, va'ora mishal anshe, avodasa, va'avodasa, va'ora mishal anshe mishmar. He cannot claim the sacrificial service for himself, nor can he claim the hizard. So I will say, we'll discuss in the Gemara what exactly these cases are. Utzricha. And I will say, the Gemara makes an interesting observation over here, is that we have essentially two different cases over here. Rashi says, "Lefluge betarti Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbanon." So also, right, we have the first case. We have the first case ultimately of Temuras Asham, and the second case of Asham Shemesu Bailov, V'Shekipru Bailov. So both remember again, in both of these cases, in the case of Temuras Asham, so the Tanakama holds that what we allow the animal to graze until it develops a mum, sell it off, use the monies to go ahead and what? Use the monies to purchase Nadava. Rabbi Eliezer says you let the animal die. Then I both say the Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer have this same exact machlokes in two cases. Case number one is Temuras Asham. Case number two is Asham Shemesu Bailov. Either the owner of the Asham died or they ended up going ahead and what? Utilizing a different animal for a kapara. Then I both say, if you think about these cases, they're essentially the same. Why are they the same? They're both dealing with what? A leftover extra asham animal. That's the common denominator. And what the Chachamim say is, whenever you have a quote-unquote extra asham animal, whether it's extra because there was Temurah, or whether it was extra because the owner died, or because the owner ended up using another animal for a kapara, what's the halacha? Let it graze, develop a mum, sell it off, and ultimately use the money for nedava. Rabbi Eliezer says, any case where you have an extra asham animal, what do? You let it die. To which the Gemara says, okay, why do you have to bring down both cases? Or either tell me Temurah, or tell me the case of where the owner died or found atonement, effected atonement with another animal. Because we both say it's the same concept. It's extra or leftover asham. You don't need two cases. To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you why you do. Asham. So we'll say, if you would have just said the first case of Asham, Mishum de Gazar la'achar kapara atu lifnei kapara. Because we'll say again, if it would have just said, ultimately again, this first case. But that's the case where Rabbi Elazar says Yamusu. Why? Because ultimately we have to be gozer. We have to be gozer after kapara, lest you come to inappropriately utilize the animal before kapara. Aval gabe Temuras asham. Rabbi Elazar regarding the second case. The first case. I'm sorry. Had it just said the second case, that's where you said Rabbi Elazar would have held that you let the animal die because we're gozer la'achar kapara atu lifnei kapara. However, by Temuras asham vlad Temurasa ema modi rabbanan. But perhaps in the case ultimately of Temurah, Rabbi Eliezer would agree with the Rabbanan. V'yashmuinan hasam, and if it would have just said the other case, ba'akam Rabbanan, it's only in that case where the Rabbanan hold their position. Haval gabe asham modu le Rabbi Eliezer. But perhaps in the case of asham, ultimately they would agree with Rabbi Eliezer. Therefore, tzricha. So both say again. Essentially, what the Gemara is saying is each case has their unique peculiarity, and therefore both cases are necessary, even though they both convey the same basic idea. The fundamental machlokes, the Rabbanan and Rabbi Eliezer, is any time you have a quote-unquote extra asham. Rabbi Eliezer says no problem. The Rabbanan say no problem. Let it graze, develop a mum, sell it off, use the proceeds to purchase nedava. Rabbi Eliezer says let it die. Let it die. Amrav Nachman, Amrav Baravua. Machlokes la'achar kapara. Ultimately, again, the machlokes of Rabbi says when only after the owner already achieved kapara. Aval lifnei kapara, but ultimately, again, if we're talking about an extra asham before kapara, divrei hakol hu atzmo yikarev asham. Everyone agrees that what? Even the vlad. I will say, for example, this is most easy to illustrate this with the case of vlad, the case of offspring. So I'll say, when do they have their machlokes about the status of the offspring? Only after the original asham was offered, right? So now the shaila is, what's the status of the offspring, right? So Rabbi Elazar will say it has to die. Chum will say redeem it. However, again, halacha l'maisa, if we're talking about lifnei kapara, the original asham has not yet been offered up, then what? Divrei hakol atzmo yikarev asham. Everyone agrees that even the offspring has the ability to be offered up as an asham. Amar Rava. So Rava says, I don't understand. Shtei tshuvas b'davar. There are two problems I have with this. Chada de'in adam iskaper b'davar abba ba'avera. Both say this is the first wide line. A person in general can't affect atonement through something that occurred through avera. Then I must remember again, what you're telling me over here is if you have not yet offered up the original asham animal, then either the vlad, the offspring, or for that matter the temurah, will be usable for the actual asham obligation. But how could that be? We have a general principle. A person cannot affect atonement through something that occurred through sinful measures. Temurah is an avera. How can you therefore affect kapara through the offspring of the temurah animal? Va'od, hatani Rabbi Chanina, l'sil Rabbi Shmuel Levi, da'amar, vlad rishon karav, vlad sheni eno karav. Furthermore, again, about we learned elsewhere, that's what? It is only the first offspring which can be offered up. The second offspring, we had this 2 days ago, right? The second generation offspring cannot be offered up. You remember why? Because what are we afraid of? We're afraid Shema Yigdalu Adarim. We're concerned that people are going to raise flocks of sacrificial animals, and that we do not want. Ella, itmar hachi itmar. Rather, here's how you have to frame it. Machlokes, the machlokes, I will say, ultimately regarding what? The Vlad Asham, or I should say, the Vlad Temuras Asham, the machlokes about the status of the offspring of the Temurah Asham. So also just to clarify what case we're dealing with over here. I set aside animal A as my Asham. Then what happens? I commit Naveira, I do Temurah. I substitute animal B for animal A. What's the halacha now? Both animals are Kaddish. Animal B, my Temurah animal, now gives birth. The machlokes of the Mishnah Rabbosai is, what is the status of the vlad of the Temurah? So the Rabbanan will say, it has sanctity, let it graze, develop a mum, sell it off, and use the proceeds for carbonic purposes. Rabbi Eliezer says what? Let it die. Now watch this. So the Gemara says like this, machlokes kodim kapara. The machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan about what to do with the vlad of a Temurah is when? Before you brought the actual asham itself. However, avala achar kapara hu atzmo karav ola. But Rabbi say if the original asham was already brought, then what? Everyone agrees that the offspring of the Temurah itself can be offered up as an ola, which Rabbi says is incredible. Which means that what? Everyone agrees that not only does it not have to die, not only does it not have to be put out to pasture to go ahead and develop a mum and then be sold off, but what? The animal itself could be, the vlad of the Temurah itself can be offered up as an ola. Pretty incredible. V'atani Rav Chanina l'sil Rabbi Shmuel Levi. So to which the Gemara says, but one second, what about that which we brought before, that Rabbi Chanina brought as a proof to Rabbi Shmuel Levi? To which the Gemara says, kasha. Indeed, Rabbi say that is problematic. Rabbi Avin bar Kahana. Hirfrish nekeva la'asham. And we'll say actually we'll have to stop over here. We'll pick up Emirat Hashem at this boy minei Emirat Hashem tomorrow. Shkoyach.